On the morning of October 29th, 1929, the air on Wall Street was thick with fear. What had once been an unstoppable engine of wealth suddenly collapsed. Black Tuesday had arrived. In just a few hours, fortunes vanished. Men in crisp suits stood frozen in disbelief as stock prices plunged. The trading floor erupted into chaos, panic spreading faster than anyone could control. But this wasn't just a bad day for investors. It was the beginning of the worst economic disaster in modern history. For years, America had been riding high on the wave of the Roaring '20s. Stocks soared, credit was easy, and optimism felt endless. Ordinary people poured their life savings into the market, convinced prices could only rise. But beneath the surface, the system was dangerously fragile. Speculation ran wild, and banks, hungry for profits, lent recklessly to investors who had no way to repay. The economy had become a massive house of cards. And in October 1929, it collapsed. As the market crashed, the dominoes fell. Banks failed one after another. Families rushed to withdraw their savings, only to find locked doors and empty vaults. Businesses shut down. Jobs disappeared. Unemployment surged to a staggering 25%. Breadlines stretched for blocks. In rural America, farmers lost their land to foreclosure, while the Dust Bowl turned fertile farmland into barren wastelands. The pain didn't stop at America's borders. The Great Depression rippled across the globe, devastating economies from Europe to Asia. Nations turned inward, raising tariffs in desperation, but instead of protection, they suffocated global trade. Relief came slowly. President Franklin D. Roosevelt launched the New Deal, a bold experiment of public works, financial reform, and social safety nets. It helped, but recovery dragged on for years. In the end, it wasn't policy that truly ended the Depression. It was war. World War II reignited industry, created mass employment, and pulled the global economy out of collapse. Decades later, in October 1973, a new kind of weapon was unleashed. Not with bullets or bombs, but with barrels of oil. The Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries imposed an oil embargo on nations supporting Israel during the Yom Kippur War. Almost overnight, the world's most powerful economies were starved of fuel. Oil prices didn't just rise, they quadrupled. Gas stations became battlegrounds. Endless lines of drivers wrapped around city blocks, waiting hours for fuel. Some stations ran dry, others imposed strict limits. A simple trip to work suddenly became a costly decision. But the crisis went far beyond the gas pump. Energy costs rippled through the global economy. Food prices soared. Transportation costs exploded. Businesses crushed by rising expenses cut production and laid off workers. Inflation surged while growth stalled. The world entered a terrifying new era, stagflation, a deadly mix of high inflation, rising unemployment, and stagnant growth. The crisis exposed how dangerously dependent industrial nations had become on cheap oil. Governments scrambled to adapt, investing in fuel efficiency, alternative energy, and strategic oil reserves. Power shifted. Oil exporting nations were no longer just suppliers. They were economic kingmakers. Then came the early 2000s, fueled by a simple promise: home ownership for everyone. Banks handed out mortgages to almost anyone, even those with risky credit. Housing prices soared, and Wall Street saw opportunity. Risky loans were bundled into complex financial products and sold worldwide, stamped as safe by credit agencies that ignored the danger beneath. For years, the system appeared unstoppable. Investors profited, banks thrived, homeowners believed prices would never fall. But in 2006, the cracks began to show. Housing prices peaked and then declined. Homeowners owed more than their homes were worth. Defaults surged. And in 2008, the illusion shattered. Lehman Brothers collapsed, sending shockwaves through global markets. Banks stopped lending. Stock markets plunged. Trillions of dollars vanished almost overnight. Governments rushed to stop total collapse. Bailouts were launched. Interest rates were slashed to near zero. Massive stimulus flooded the system. But for millions, the damage was permanent. Homes were lost. Jobs disappeared. Savings evaporated. The crisis exposed the greed, weak oversight, and fragile foundation of the global financial system. Then, at the start of 2020, markets were soaring once again. Confidence was high. But an invisible threat was spreading. At first, it was easy to ignore. Then, it wasn't. As the virus spread across the globe, governments shut down entire economies. Businesses closed overnight. Supply chains froze. Fear took over. Investors rushed for the exits. Markets collapsed at historic speed. The Dow Jones suffered its worst single-day drops ever. Oil prices crashed. Chaos ruled. This time, governments acted fast. Interest rates were cut to zero. Trillions of dollars were injected into the economy. Stimulus checks were sent directly to citizens. And then, something unexpected happened. Markets rebounded with record speed. Tech companies thrived. By late 2020, stock markets had erased their losses. But beneath Wall Street's recovery, Main Street was still suffering. Small businesses collapsed. Unemployment surged. The divide between financial markets and everyday life grew wider than ever. History has shown us one thing again and again. No economy is immune. Crashes happen fast. Recoveries take time. And the lessons are often forgotten. So the question remains, what will trigger the next collapse? Make sure you're prepared. Subscribe and join us as we break down the past to understand the future.